And hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Two Backset Podcasts. I'm one of your hosts, Thomas, aka Mr. Warburg. Joining me for Week 5, episode number 5, is Patrick, aka Mr. Fusion.
Greetings and salutations, fans of the college pigskin.
Indeed, we are barreling through. We are a third of the way through the season at this point, for most teams at least. Our teams are taking diverging paths this season. Obviously, I'm a Hawkeye fan.
Yep.
Texas Fusion is a Texas fan. They're going in different directions at the moment, and we'll get into that here very shortly. But before we get into our Week 5 preview, what from Week 4 jumped out at you? Obviously, we had some big games.
Yep.
Oregon taking on Colorado. You had Iowa, Penn State in the CBS broadcast. Drama with Notre Dame, Ohio State. So what jumped out at you from Week 4?
Let's see here. Clemson, Florida State. Florida State has a ton of speed on that team, but I think a little bit was exposed with Florida State. So I think they're gonna get exposed even more at some point. Props to Ohio State. Obviously, they gutted it out in a defensive. I'm not gonna say classic, but a defensive battle with Notre Dame, and they got pulled away at the end there. That's probably it. Other than that, and obviously Colorado came back to earth. We kind of knew that was going to happen, but Oregon really put the foot to the pedal on them there and just ran it all the way up. Right? Didn't show any remorse. I think it just kind of exposed what we knew, that they don't have a defensive line. Colorado, they don't have an offensive line, and then they can't. They were really relying on Travis Hunter, their two-way player, to really hold the anchor. He was anchoring both sides of the football. So another season of recruiting and NIL. I think Colorado's going to be a dangerous team next year, man. I really do.
Oh, for sure. I think they're the odds-on favorites going into next year's Big 12 slate.
Right now, it all depends on Shedeur Sanders. Is he going to go into the draft while his stock's high? If he is, are they going to bring in a transfer, which the quarterback, which it's possible they do that. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see the roster next year. But the things that they have, because there is a 5-star recruit that's actually between Iowa and Colorado right now, a lineman, right? If I'm
Well,
not
4-star
mistaken.
technically. He may end up a 5-star.
Okay. And they're both duking it out. That 5-star quarterback, but he's in 25's class. He's currently being recruited by Alabama and Colorado. So, Coach Prime's like pushing it right now, but came down to earth. I think this is a little bit of this could be a much closer game, USC this week against Colorado, just because USC's defense is very. I'm not going to say they're subpar, but I'm not going to say that
they're not on Oregon's
above,
level for sure.
No, they're not above average. I would say they're probably average to slightly below average. So there's an opportunity there for Coach Prime. I think, and I keep referring to him, but I need to be honest. This is about the players. I let me just echo what he says. It's about the players. This isn't about me. It's about the players. I think this is a little bit more of a manageable matchup for Colorado this week. So that last week that was a big deal. That really was. And then obviously the other one is the coach firing Mel Tucker over at Michigan State was shown the door. I think this was like a week long process where a week ago they were talking about terminating him, and then we barely find out about it today. It's official, and I think we talked about it last week's show. I think a lot of those kids will be transferring out of here very, very soon. They have a 30-day window now that kicks in that they can transfer right now, and I think we're going to start seeing some players leave now, and of course they'll be gone at the end of the season, so that roster will completely turn over next year. But unfortunate events that went over there at Michigan State.
Yeah.
Really sucks. But
and it's going to get even messier this offseason.
Right. So I think there's an opportunity there for some of those Big Ten teams, like we said. Maybe Matt Rule at Nebraska opens the door and welcomes some of those guys over there, because it's not like they weren't like they weren't a top 25 team, but they had a pretty decent roster. I think that there was a lot of different layers there, like coaching, obviously head coach, but staff in general. They're going to completely gut that place out, and that's unfortunate. Yeah, it came to that, but those are the big stories, man. I'm just gearing up for this week. I think there's a few good tests here this week in college football.
I do have a couple questions on Week 4 specific to my Hawkeyes for you. I just want to get your reaction to the answers.
Okay.
So number 1, what would be your ballpark for like the lowest number of wide receiver catches under Kirk Ferentz at Iowa in a season?
In a season?
Yeah. Like, what would you expect? Obviously, we've been tight end heavy his whole time here. But what do you think generally the lowest would be?
I'm trying to do the numbers. I would say probably in the 400s.
Oh no, I'm talking catches, like receptions.
Oh, receptions. Like by an individual player, or by
No,
the entire
the
receiving
team,
core.
whole team,
Oh, the team. Hmm,
single season.
trying to think here. I would probably say 800 some odd catches, maybe.
76 is the lowest. I think it was the average. What do you think they're on
Okay.
pace for this year?
If 76 is the average,
No, that's the
I'm
average.
gonna.
That's the lowest.
Oh, that's the lowest. I don't know what they're on pace for.
42.
Are you serious?
14
Wow,
wide receiver catches through 4 weeks. 14.
that's insane.
Absolute fucking absurdity. It's
Oh man,
2023. Wide receivers have 14 catches. And I know they're not bad. Like,
I
Regani's
didn't
had really good
realize.
seasons, too.
Wait, I didn't realize it was 14 catches.
Yep.
Holy crap! Wow.
Obviously, Penn State's a very good defense. Iowa
No,
got destroyed 31-0. They're a very good defense. I would argue you could give me the argument right now Penn State's the second best team in the country behind Texas, because that's my money right now, because Georgia just hasn't woken up and beat anybody, like demolished them all through a game yet. Texas and Penn State have. You could tell me that's the argument and I'd believe it.
See, I was a little flipped there. I was thinking yard. I kept deferring to yardage, not reception.
Yeah, the actual just catches.
Just catches. But still, to think 14 at this point by receivers. And that's including the fact that the top tight end was out last week.
Exactly. He's done for the season.
Yikes. And the top two running backs on the depth chart were out
also
last
out.
week. Good Lord.
I mean, it's gotten to the point where you have to know the coaches know this sucks.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you got Cade McNamara coming up and be like, I'm just running the plays as called. And that was his whole, like, verbatim answer, which is like, or not verbatim, very close. Just very glib, like, well, I don't check into pass plays kind of thing. Like, I can't remember the last time we saw a quarterback audible into a pass. Never happens at Iowa. And that's all on coaching. Coaching sucks. Bryant needs to fucking leave. Or at the very least, go back up to the booth. Get off the field. Get out of the quarterback's ear all the fucking time. Just get out of the way. Because when he was in the booth, Iowa was actually decent. And then he went on an emotionally abusive, swear at everyone tirade, and he got kicked out by the administration.
So wide receivers account for 32% of the completions that Cade McNamara has made.
Yeah. That in and of itself shouldn't be shocking because we're tight ends so heavy, but the fact that we literally don't pass the ball anymore, like we just stopped doing it, is fucking insane.
Is it Lachey or
Lachey?
Lachey. Luke Lachey didn't play last week, and he still leads the team in receptions at 10.
Yeah. That's the leading 10.
And Eric the other tight end, has 10.
Yeah.
And then the next up is a wide receiver with 6.
That's probably Ragaini. Or maybe Seth Anderson. Yeah.
No. Yeah, Nico Ragaini has 6, and LaShawn Williams is a running back. But I'm talking about just overall the.
Yeah,
if you talk about,
it's brutal. Wearing Iowa gear like hurts.
There are 3. So he's only made completions to 3 wide receivers.
Yep.
Which means you're not getting, like, your longest pass this season, Thomas, was 35 yards.
It was the first play of the season.
Yep. That was the first play, 35-yard touchdown pass.
Yeah, it's not fun. And you know what the shitty part is?
Yards.
We're going to still win 10, maybe 11 games. Because the West looks horrendous.
And then Kurt's going to say there's no need to make a change because we won 10 games.
He's going to pull that shit again. And it's like, dude, if he doesn't retire this year, we run the same shit next year, good luck getting 4 wins.
Well,
because
I think
all those teams are coming, and the West is gone.
Well, I think at some point he's going to have to, not him, but I think your
the new AD, whenever they officially hire her, because it's probably going to be Beth Gates or Getz. Yeah. I think it's Gates. Whenever she's officially hired, she has to tell Brian, step back to offensive line only, or you're gone.
Yeah,
that's it. That's the only 2 options.
It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to win recruits with offensive.
It's gotten so bad and so blatant because we have several national televised games this year. It's just how do you recruit going up against, hey, play at USC or Oregon or Washington, or, you're an offensive skill position. Yeah, this is why you should come to Iowa to do nothing. Just stand there. Oh, it's been very hard to watch.
Yeah, you guys may win 10 games because Michigan State victory, Purdue
Everything
victory,
but Wisconsin
Wisconsin
and
and
if we make it to Indy, everything else, we're the favorite.
Minnesota may be a little interesting.
They just got pantsed by Northwestern in double
I
overtime.
know.
That was
I
awful. They gave up a 21-point lead in the fourth quarter to fucking Northwestern.
Northwestern.
Post
Not
Pat
the
Fitzgerald
yeah, I was gonna
Northwestern.
say,
Are you kidding me? That's a team that just fucking rolled over and died.
yeah,
Oh,
you guys may have the only one I can see is probably
yeah,
Wisconsin.
especially it's at Wisconsin. If it was at home, we'd be favored, but it's at
Yeah.
Wisconsin. Even still, we might end up back in Indy facing Penn State. God, what a shit show
Hey,
that's going to be.
Remember what I told you about Wisconsin? Their only loss at this point was against Washington State, and they went down to the wire with Oregon
Yeah,
State last week.
Wisconsin seems to be putting it together, but
yeah, yeah,
they also haven't faced great defenses yet.
no, very true.
And their schedule, like Iowa's, is also bad, but they also have to face some better defenses going forward. So remains to be seen. Plus, the weather's going to change. So
That's that's a very crazy stat. 14 receptions, man.
yeah,
While we were talking, I pulled up the data, and it's like, oh god,
it's a nightmare.
whoa.
So anybody who's watching this who is not an Iowa fan, don't watch. It's not even like last year was sicko mode Iowa. We're the sickos national champion. Don't watch Iowa this year. It's so bad. Even the sickos are like, yeah, we're good. We can watch something else. We'd rather just like go watch Rutgers or something. Don't watch Iowa. But speaking of, Iowa's in our pick'em games this week.
Of course it is.
Because that was the whole conceit of the show is Fusion's a Texas guy. I'm a Hawkeye guy. So we'll pick our games. Those will be our 2 every week, plus our other 3 to fill out the pick'em. Man, this week's kind of rough. No high-profile ones like last week in terms of like national, like, oh, everyone's going to talk about this game kind of conversations. But anything jump out of you on week 5?
The Friday night game, Oregon State versus Utah. I think this could be a really fun. I like this one being a Friday night game. I think if Cam Rising finally does come back for Utah, it'll make it very interesting. Now, I really liked what I saw from DJ at Oregon State. I think he provides like that whole air raid up tempo approach really fits what they're trying to do over there. I like this game. That's one on my radar. Obviously Texas and Kansas. Look, Texas is a 16.5 point favorite at this point, right? They're playing in Austin. But this is a game probably where it's like the first half may be interesting. And then after that, just the depth of Texas's defense will really catch up to Kansas. But I'm going to watch that one. Actually, I'm heading out to San Antonio. I know it's here in Austin, but I'm going to a buddy of mine, one of my childhood friends. He just moved out to San Antonio, so we're going to go catch the game at a local pub or something. We're going to figure it out. We're going to go watch the game. Yeah. So, but yeah, man, Utah, Oregon State's interesting to me. USC, Colorado, seeing if Colorado what they can do to bounce back from that just that flaying from Oregon,
like just
that's
getting
one.
demolished.
I mean, it was embarrassing in the first quarter. That's how bad it was, and they never had a chance. Like it was just they were pushed up against the ropes at kickoff, and that was the end of it. That was really it. So that was really it, man. Week 4 going into week 5, yeah, that's really it's a decent slate, but for me, it's like I'm just quietly gearing up. Hopefully, it's not a trap game for Texas because next week is the big one, man. That's the big one.
Yep.
They beat OU in Dallas. Then people are going to start talking about playoff. I still will not say Texas is back. That's not going to happen yet. Not yet, man. Not yet. Not yet. Not until they win the Big 12 title game. Then if they win and they are one of the top 4 teams, then I'll say they're back.
That's a fair assessment. It's a fair
Now,
assessment.
if they win 70-0 against OU next week, then people can't. If people want to say Texas is back, that's fine. I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. I'm a little more fickle than most people.
Since we've been talking about Texas, I did have one other kind of
Sure.
broad picture, broad spectrum question. Jesus, I can't talk today. Uh, if you had to say right now, as you've watched all these games, who's the number one team in the country? Like, who is the actual best team right now?
Ooh, that's a good
So
question,
obviously, I mean,
man.
Georgia, you could go with them because they haven't lost, but
Yep.
it seems like they've been waiting to the third quarter to wake up and beat
Yep.
people, which, like, dude, that's gonna bite you in the ass.
Yep. 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 Yep.
And like as I said
Yeah.
earlier in the show, Penn State, Texas haven't done that
Yep.
beyond maybe the opener against Rice, but
Rice is not a bad team
oh no,
in
they're
their
not
conference.
a complete worst team in the
They're-
country kind of bad.
No.
But
Hmm.
and even then they still beat them through with 35-3.
Yep.
Like yeah,
Mi-
for me,
Michigan hasn't played anybody.
exactly. They've like, and again, Rutgers was, I think, a little better than everyone predicted coming into the season. They gave them a little bit of a, you know, a little bit of a competitive first quarter, and then they rolled over because it's Rutgers
Yeah.
against Michigan. But yeah, Michigan, they haven't really been tested. You haven't seen a complete dominant performance like you have from Penn State. Even Ohio State hasn't had that great of a start so far, but they have been more tested because they went to Notre Dame and beat
Sure.
Notre Dame against two 10-man fronts, by the way. What the fuck? And it's apparently not the first time. Did you see the highlight from a couple weeks ago with
Yep.
the Tennessee State one where they almost scored a touchdown?
Yes.
It's like, are you
I saw that.
shitting me? What the fuck is Freeman doing where that's not cleaned up? That's the easiest
Oh
thing to
man.
clean up in the world. Make sure you have 11 guys on the field. Just do that.
He's a former college and NFL player.
Yeah,
Like
it's like, who
this
knows?
is something.
Is the 11th man there stopping that touchdown and you
Well,
win the game?
he was a safety, right? He was a safety, right?
Sounds right.
Their
Think so.
job. If I'm not mistaken, he was a safety. It's their job to count the men on the field. So that's something he should be coaching his safeties every single time, or just whoever is the captain on that side of the ball, right? That I just don't understand that. I don't understand that.
Yeah, makes no sense.
Um, I think given the fact that Alabama bounced back against Ole Miss last week and looked solid, not like world beaters, but they look like they slightly righted the ship. That really helps Texas. And obviously, I mean, I could be a homer and just outright say it, but I think at this point you have to say, at this point maybe Texas is the top team in the country right now. You know, I mean, because they went into Tuscaloosa and they put it to the Tide. You know, and their defense just looks phenomenal. Like they were just blowing the line. Like the Baylor Bears were just getting destroyed at the line of scrimmage, both sides of the ball for
Mm-hmm.
4 quarters. And when I think back, like I know Baylor's not a very good team, but if you remember in week 1, they were thumping around Utah. They looked tough, and they had people kind of like, "Uh-oh, is Utah going to lose this game to Baylor?" Remember that? Like people forget that they came out pretty intense against Utah. So if you think about that by proxy, then if Utah's a top 10 team, then Baylor kind of looked like like an actual reasonable opponent, and then Texas goes and just destroys them in Waco. I don't know, man. Oof. I don't know. Maybe you say Texas is the number 1 team, but you got to give it. But you have to give it to Georgia because they're the 2-time champs.
Yeah,
You
until
have to give
proven
them that.
otherwise, or they get like a down to the wire scare, or like
Yeah.
through next week, like say Texas, you know, beats Oklahoma by 14,
Yep.
Or inverse, like say Oklahoma just runs all over them, like because Oklahoma is also undefeated,
Yes. Yes.
and it remains to be seen because obviously they started lower, so they're not going to shoot up that high quite yet, and Penn State just continues to dominate. They have Northwestern this week, so they're not going to prove
Yeah.
anything there. But
Yeah.
like say they run the table in the Big Ten East and get to Indy, probably facing Iowa or Wisconsin and win again. Are they the number 1 team if that happens? That'd be a pretty hard case to say no, because you got to beat Ohio State and Michigan. I think it's Ohio State on the road, right? Yeah, Michigan's at home for them, I think.
Yep.
So like, that's a tall order for their schedule. And Penn State certainly looked the part against Iowa, but again, you're going against the Iowa offense. They could make anybody look like the Georgia Bulldogs.
Well, I will say this. Oklahoma came back down to remember we mentioned this last
Yeah,
week.
they had a
It,
they definitely
they came back down to
they
earth
came back
against
down to
Cincinnati
earth. Yeah.
because they were blowing the doors off of everybody. But
In
we were
fairness,
like, hey,
Cincinnati's probably the deepest team they've played so far because they'd been recruiting at a very high level for a long time.
yeah,
So
yeah,
like that's a good program,
yeah.
but they still weren't
Even
like
though
destroying them.
no, even though Luke Fickle left, there were
Yeah,
there
they
were
got a lot of
parts in
dudes
place.
left. Yeah.
Yeah, they have plenty of bodies over there, but I think that was kind of a wake up call, just like the overtime victory against Clemson for Florida State was a wake up call for like just people like really saying Florida State's just next level. Oklahoma is so underappreciated; they're a monster. It's like, okay, we're gonna pump the brakes a little bit because there is something there to kind of
I would
keep your
also
eye
say
on.
Clemson's probably a little underrated in this conversation when it comes to
Yeah,
that Florida State Clemson game because obviously Dabo I think was being a little hyperbolic with his hey we're a few plays from number 5 in the country, but I'm like, okay, that's crazy because Duke absolutely manhandled you, but also Duke's good,
yep,
right? They're a ranked team for with good reason. They've looked really solid. They're definitely not like pushing top 10 or anything, but they're very good. And then Clemson, because they fell out of the top 25, everyone's like kind of writing off that Florida State game, but it's like
sure.
Clemson's good. Like they
Yeah.
really do have those kind of athletes still.
No, they still have the bodies
Just
there.
for
They
some
have
whatever reason, their execution has been doo doo.
horrible play calling, man.
That also
Horrible
that
play,
helps too.
horrible play calling by with Dabo there. But that being said, I say Georgia. The reality is that Georgia they have a cakewalk until they go in late October to
'Cause
Florida.
they got Auburn
I'm
this week, right?
They have Auburn, and Auburn's coming off of that
Yeah,
loss to A&M.
yeah.
But in late October, they have. I'm sorry to correct myself. Florida's coming to Georgia for the world's largest cocktail party.
Oh yeah, and Florida's gonna get destroyed because their offense
Uh,
is not quite Iowa bad, but it's not good.
but see, here's the thing. My point was is that we're talking about is Georgia. But here's the thing. They got Florida, a now ranked Missouri. Who knows? They may not be. Same thing with Ole Miss. They may not be. Tennessee. They may not be. But as it stands right now, those are all ranked opponents. And then they finish off the season against Georgia Tech. So there is a 4 game stretch there.
Yeah, theirs is
Showing like
backloaded. Yeah,
backloaded for Georgia. So like, hey, they run the table outright, and they don't. There's nothing here that like they squeak by. They're in the driver's seat, man, to stay number one. Michigan, Michigan's got a much tougher road ahead of them, in my opinion.
oh yeah.
Much tougher road. I mean, it's just you look at the schedule isn't bad, but then at the back end of the year they got Penn State and then Ohio State to finish off the season. That's yeah, that's a real tough stretch there. 2 out of 3 games there. The when I look at like this schedule versus Georgia, Georgia has 4 games that are like okay, they're currently ranked, but they may be all pretenders come 3 or 4 weeks from now. But hey, man, we both agree that Penn State's probably going to stay top 10 through the rest of the way,
I agree.
right?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
they look the part. And
yeah,
Drew Aller, some of those just
yeah.
fastballs he was whipping, I was like, damn, that dude's got an arm.
We had talked about that he hadn't really thrown the ball enough, that there wasn't a body of work
Yeah,
for
against
us to really
Illinois, he was
tell.
kind of inconsistent, and then
Yeah,
just has a beauty of a game against Iowa. Some of those
yep,
balls were they were perfect. And like Iowa wasn't in a bad position. They were just putting the ball in the perfect spot every single time. Like that's how 17 play drives happen, you know? Because like our guys are in the position to make the tackle, and make the play, but they're still executing perfectly.
yeah,
And any team that can do that against Iowa is a very, very good team. Because
yeah,
to do that against Iowa's defense, it demands almost perfection. And that's
yep.
really hard for college teams to do. And Penn State did it. So that's just my thoughts as a Big Ten homer.
Sure, no. Kyle McCord over at Ohio State is looking like
He's figuring it
got
out, it looks like.
he's figuring it out. But the thing is that in a few weeks they've got Penn State, and
Hmm.
then they go to Wisconsin the next week. Going into Madison's going to
That's
be
a
interesting. And then,
back-to-back tough road.
yeah, that's a tough 2 game stretch there for Ohio State. So they're all going to get tested. So for Texas, I really think that they need to come out this week, look strong. And it may be a game the first half, but in the second half, if they put their foot to the pedal and just roll over they need to go into Dallas and they absolutely have to put their mark on that game
Oh yeah,
against Oklahoma. They have
yeah.
to
You do
because
that. There you go. They're number 2 for sure, if not number
yep,
1. Maybe jumping
yep.
Georgia, depending on the
And, and
results.
and it all stands with as long as Alabama continues to look like
Yeah, if
they're
they look like on the rebound, all the better.
yeah, that really helps them out because after Oklahoma, for Texas, it's you. They go to Houston for U of H, BYU, Kansas State, TCU. Like all these teams are kind of like they're not at that level that we thought. We thought Kansas State maybe or TCU looked were going to be better, but they're not. They're not as strong as we thought we were thinking at the beginning of the season. So I think this Kansas win's a big one for them, and I would really like to see them just completely go in there and just demolish Kansas in in Austin this weekend. That would be a big statement for them. And then they just turn around and they do the same thing against Oklahoma, like you said. They're positioned for number 2 all the way the rest of the way. I think Michigan's probably the one because they really haven't beaten anybody. You have to start questioning like, should they really be at number 2 at this point? Is that really fair?
Agreed.
Yeah.
All right, so
Good
let's move
stuff,
on.
man.
Let's move on
Good
to
stuff.
proper Week 5 games on our pick 'em pool. The
Let's do
leaderboard,
it.
as stands right now, is Fusion in number 1. He picked 15 wins so far through Week 4. Eddie is 14. And then we have a 3-way tie for 3rd with myself, Chris, aka Gamma, and Shadow, all at 13. And then Ty and Centroka have mostly stopped picking games. So hey, if you two watch this, pick your games.
Yes,
You're in the
please.
pool. Pick the games. It's free. You don't even have to know anything. Chris doesn't even follow college football, and he might end up winning the whole thing and winning a free wood burning by me. Okay, so Week 5. All right, so we start off, as we said, with Utah, Oregon State.
Yep.
So number 10, Utah at 19, Oregon State. That's an 8 p.m. kick Central Time, Friday night on FS1. So, Fusion, who you got?
Oregon State is a 3-point favorite because they are the home team.
Different Utah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
They're the Aggies. Utah State's the Aggies.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm
You got,
sorry. I meant Oregon State.
yeah,
I meant Oregon State.
yeah.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
Beavs.
Okay. The Beavs. Okay. So Oregon State is the 3-point favorite because obviously they're the home team, right? I think the big thing here is Cam Rising. That's the X factor here. We don't know if he's going to play or not. With that being said, I really think that what I saw from DJ against, and I don't want to say his last name because I don't want to butcher it. I will get it wrong completely. But what I saw against Washington State was Oregon State's a really good team. They just it was a dogfight at the end of the game, right? Much better offense for Oregon State. Utah has a really solid defense. I like Utah. I really do like the Utes. Even if Cam shows up again, plays this week, I think there's going to be a lot of rust there. So I'm picking Oregon State, man. Picking
Yeah,
Oregon State.
I'm going opposite just to start trying to making up some ground.
I know. I know.
Also, because I do think there's a gap in terms of depth and talent on. I think the
Sure.
best unit on the field is Utah State's defense.
Sure.
And because of how they play, which is much like Iowa, I think that gives them the advantage in those kind of rock fight kind of games.
Yep.
And they have a more dynamic offense than, like, say, what generally those kind of defensive forward teams can do. So I think I'm going to stick with the road team here. Utah
Okay.
State coming off, a really big game, loss on the road, coming home. Generally, you're hoping for a rebound, but I think Utah is going to, kind of assert themselves as like, hey, Oregon's great, but like we're right here.
Sure.
I'm gonna go with Utah.
Okay. My biggest thing here is that I think that we're talking about Utah having a really solid defense, the air raid approach of offense with Oregon State. I just think that when you lay it all, it's going to be a real test for Utah at this point, and I think this is an opportunity for Oregon State.
Yeah, don't disagree. I think it's a. I mean, that's why the line is the way it is. It's a coin toss,
Yeah,
basically.
I think the bender break approach to Utah's defense because they're not exactly like monsters that destroy everybody, right? They're
No.
just they're
They
so
play
well
that
coached.
keep you in front of you,
Yep.
keep your zone concepts. You are not
Yep.
drifting. You are in your fucking spot.
Yep.
You
But
know?
they barely won by a touchdown against UCLA with a freshman quarterback with that approach. What do they do with a
But
seasoned
that's
quarterback?
what those defenses will lend you to is one
Sure.
score, closer games.
Yeah.
But the experience on both sides of the ball, obviously not discounting the quarterback position and the coaching that's been there.
Yeah.
that's how you generally end up winning those one-score games more often than you lose them. Like
Yeah.
that's Iowa's approach. That's what Utah has
Yeah, I
done
would
now,
say
almost just as long with Whittingham.
yeah.
Like the odds shift in your favor because of just how you play the game. You're generally going to be in that position because, like I said, against Iowa, like how they play D, it demands your A game to beat it.
And
Right
that's
in those
why
clutch moments, it demands it. And
that's why I understand, because you speak firsthand, witnessing how the bend but don't break field position game works for Iowa,
it's
and
why
it
it
has
works in
for a
college
long
and not
time.
in the NFL because
Yeah.
you have
Yeah.
such a greater variance in terms of you know execution because you got freshmen playing with seniors and you got different levels of experience and like clutch factor, right? Like
Yep.
it varies so much just play to play that
Yep.
it favors the defense that can be that rock solid.
No, it's fair,
Yeah.
because in college they play, um, the field is in chunks, bigger chunks in college football, whereas the NFL, I always tell people this: 10 yards is a fucking dogfight to get 10 yards in the NFL, right? So that's why it's a very different approach to how we people look at the game, college versus NFL level, in terms of like staff, coaching staff. And you're right, Willingham does a phenomenal job over there. I just think that when I think about it, it's like, okay, I saw them with that approach against UCLA, and it worked again against a freshman quarterback. My thing is like, this feels like, okay, we get a seasoned quarterback that can throw the ball. Okay, maybe this is the week that it happens.
Yeah,
That's
definitely something we'll both be watching on Friday night for
sure,
sure. The
sure.
next game on our pick'em is an 11 a.m. kick on
Yep.
ESPN. We have Florida, number 22, going to Kentucky. Now, since you went first, I'll pick mine here. I think we might pick the same one. I'm going
Okay.
the home team. I'm going with Kentucky. I think
I'm
they I
going with Kentucky as
I
well.
think they win and move up into the top 25.
Okay, that's
Mike
cool.
Stoops
That's
has
cool.
built a really great program at Kentucky. Florida's
Yeah,
offense is ineffective at best.
yeah.
Like is a great guy. Graham Mertz was the transfer from Wisconsin, right? Yeah, like it's Graham Mertz from Wisconsin. He's not going to blow you away, but
Nope.
Kentucky's another one of those well coached, not like defensive first teams, but they're an all around really well balanced team. Florida just doesn't look complete in any of the
No.
games I've watched from them,
I mean,
and
especially watching them against Charlotte last
yeah,
week, it's like, yeah,
yeah,
they're not dynamic
yeah,
enough,
and I
and
think I think Kentucky has the guys on both sides of the ball to take advantage of their weaknesses, and
yeah.
Stoops is a very good coach.
I agree. I think the big difference here is that Kentucky doesn't run the ball like the other teams do in the
Mhm.
SEC.
Yeah,
So but I think this is, when you really look at it, it's like this is an opportunity for Kentucky to open up the playbook, and they're gonna have some surprise plays or some no huddle mixed in here that's gonna throw Florida off its guard, and they're gonna fall out of the top 25, and they'll just more than,
they'll
I
probably
wouldn't say they
just
would
swap
swap.
places basically.
Yeah, that's fair. They could
Because
swap. They could
Kentucky's,
swap.
I want to say they were definitely in the receiving votes, weren't they?
Yep, yep. They've received
So
both
like
votes
that
last
wouldn't
year.
shock me at all if they end up low
Yeah.
top 25 with a win. So and then of course we have Kansas, Texas. We've
Yep.
talked about this consistently. Kansas is a really solid team. I think you could tell me right now they're the third best team in the Big 12, and I'd buy it. But obviously
That's fair.
there's Kansas State still floating out there too. But Kansas has looked pretty solid. They don't have a lot of depth. Their defense is a little more suspect than most of the other two, really good Big 12 teams that
Yep.
are soon to be leaving. I do think, though, the conversation we had last week about who's the best team in the Big 12 next year, I think Kansas is like, hey, don't forget about us. Like, they're building something here. Leopold, or is it Leopold?
Leopold.
Yeah.
Leopold.
I think he's building a really solid program here, and I think he may end up being a case of a guy who stays there for kind of a lifer kind of situation. If somebody like a Michigan State doesn't come poach him, I could see
Yeah.
him turning into like what Matt Campbell is now at Iowa State, where he's just going to stay there for a while. Or what I don't know about 25 years like Kirk, but definitely a guy who's like, I'm going to build my legacy here.
It's kind of like like Kyle Whittingham
Yeah,
at Utah.
yeah,
Something like where his name comes up, but he's just like,
I'm
I'm
staying. I'm
happy.
good.
I'm happy. I think that's where
And
I
and
feel
like the
really
fan
bad
base
for him.
seems to re-energize. They're not quite like Colorado level, like holy shit, we're getting game day all the time kind of stuff. But they seem to be giving a shit about football again.
Yeah.
Because there was a long stretch they did not.
No.
They fell, and they fell fucking hard after 07. And it seems like they're on their way. Like to back to relevance.
Yeah, I think we're talking about Colorado being the favorite going in next year, just because of
Oh yeah,
what
and
what
they
we
got the
think.
money and the flash and
But
yeah.
I think there you're right. I think this is a big opportunity for Kansas to kind of put their mark because obviously Oklahoma State's very disappointing. U of H is very disappointing. But that does bring up some questions with if Oklahoma State struggles, may they decide to part ways with Mike Gundy. U of H, obviously, the fan base over there is fickle with Dana Holgerson. That contract, he's rubbing the contract in the face of everyone, all of his detractors, which to me is like, yeah, you're fucked. You're done with that kind of attitude. When you say, yeah, I'm not going anywhere because my contract sucks for you guys, it's like, yeah, do you not realize that Tillman Fertitta will spend whatever it takes to get rid of you, man? And
Yeah.
yeah,
The
and
only
you're
thing
gonna
that's
have
kept him there so far is that they don't have SMU money.
exactly. That's the main thing. I mean, yeah, yeah. If U of H had SMU money, yeah, they are relying very much so on Tillman Fertitta. And at some point, like he's because he does on the Rockets and he's got all these other business ventures, he can only pump in so much, right, into just U of H. He's done a lot for them in terms of like the athletic facilities, helping recruit, all that stuff. But I think at some point, like he's going to have to pull back a little bit. It means they're going to have to bring in a coach, and so there's probably going to be a big coaching carousel in the Big 12 next year in college
Hmm.
football. I mean, I think Sonny Dykes over at TCU's kaput, but staying, not kaput. I'm sorry, he's staying. But you look at Iowa State, Matt Campbell.
Well, I think it's more of a case. I don't want to like knock Matt Campbell. I just think this year he got the worst hand possible. Like his starting quarterback. Oh, he bet on his own game like a
Right.
fucking dumbass. Running back did the same thing. Starting defensive end did the same thing. Oh, we had an offensive lineman do the same thing. Had a tight end do the same thing. What a bunch of fucking morons, right?
We've talked about this whole thing with
They
Iowa and
got
Iowa State,
screwed
but let me
by their
ask
own
you a
dudes.
layer. Let me ask you a layer of this. Did he not know anything was going on? No one came to him?
No,
You don't think
apparently it was very like like caught everybody
they
off guard.
they intentionally kept this quiet?
Well, and most of the players, like the high profile ones, were using
Yeah.
fake names and pseudonyms
Yeah.
and other family
Yeah.
members. Like they were purposefully hiding it. They weren't
Yeah.
telling their coach.
That's why
Eh,
we're talking about some of these guys should be in
That's why I'm
jail.
like, I don't know if,
Yeah.
given the all the turmoil at Michigan State, do you go hire a Rust Belt guy, coached at Toledo, who knows the area? Do you go hire Matt Campbell? Obviously, he's not coming off great success on the field, but
Right.
what he's done for their culture, their program, how much money they're spending on athletics to really beef up Ames and the whole Town thing going on, which is actually, obviously I'm an Iowa guy, but that's a really cool investment in Ames. That's fantastic. And I don't know if that happens without number one, Jamie Pollard, their AD, but also Matt Campbell, like energizing that fan base and like building a good product and a good culture. Michigan State desperately needs that. I could absolutely see them reaching out. And then that knock-on
Lot.
effect, like,
Yeah.
like there's all these new coaches, there's new positions coming into the Big 12. You got a lot of new high-profile jobs that just a few years ago were not very high-profile. It's going to be a really interesting offseason coaching-wise. And my team's
Yeah.
probably in the mix if our AD grows the spine.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking about like with where does Kansas really fit in this? Obviously, we know where they fit in basketball. We know
Yeah.
that. But then you have Colorado, Arizona, Arizona State coming next year, right?
Hmm.
I
I
mean,
still think they're like mid-level, but like
yeah,
definitely
yeah,
towards like, fourth or fifth.
sure. So this you're probably right here. It's probably going to be Colorado and Kansas, the top two teams in
Yeah,
the
that
Big
in
12
Kansas
next year.
State, and we'll see what
Mhm.
else happens the rest of the way with all these
Well,
other incoming teams.
I think the thing with TCU and Sonny Dykes is they've got to start bringing in some higher ranked recruits. That's really like I understand getting those 3-star guys and coaching them up has always been a thing with under Patterson and now Dykes, but at this point, like you've got to start you've got to start expecting that your alum to really help out with the NILs there because they're going to have to compete with U of H's money, but Baylor's going to Baylor is Baylor, right? Oklahoma
And
State,
SMU's on a higher stage now.
yep, SMU is going to be spending a lot. They've stated they've raised what I think it was like $200 million in
Yeah,
like 10 days.
Yeah.
something ridiculous. So that whole thing, remember we were joking about like they've got rich people money because they're like, yeah, we don't need the $20 million a year. We're happy to go to the ACC just to be cool, right?
Yeah.
The cool kid, they're like, we're the cool kids now, and everyone made fun of them, and then a week later, they raised over $200 million from their alums. Like, oh shit! So I think a lot of these teams in the Big 12 are really thinking about this. Like, oh crap! Like they're going to start gunning for recruits in our neck of the woods. Colorado's going to start gunning for recruits that basically the talent that Texas, Oklahoma, and A&M don't get in this region. There it's going to be a fight with all these
Yeah.
schools for
The market just got a lot denser.
yeah, yeah, it did because in the past Colorado tried to shift their focus to the actual Pacific region for recruiting, and I mean they just couldn't keep up
No.
with the Joneses over
But
there. So
back to
yeah,
our pick'em. We're both going
yeah.
Texas.
Yeah, we're both going Texas. We did this just because it's like, hey man, like I mean, yes, I get Kansas is ranked, but I think after the half, I can see
Yeah, this ain't
Texas
Charlie
coming out
Strong,
of it.
Texas.
No,
Yep.
yeah.
That ain't happening.
Or it's not even Tom Herman's Texas.
Nope.
Let's be real.
All right.
So yeah,
So we got two other games. One, the other no brainer for me is Michigan State at Iowa. Michigan
yep,
State just firing their coach. Iowa's coming off a loss. You want to tell me that defense doesn't have something to prove, right?
yeah.
Like they're going to come out on fire. Mark D'Antonio is going to apparently be on the sideline for Michigan State, like involved in their program. Kirk Ferentz does not like that man.
Nope.
Our whole fan base does not like that man. Iowa State, Iowa City, even after that just brutal bloodletting at Penn State. It's a night game at Kinnick. It's the first one of the season. It's going to be a rocking place, and I think Iowa's going to. I think we're going to score. It wouldn't shock me if it's like a 38-10 kind of score.
Hawkeyes are 12.5 point favorites.
Yeah.
I think they obviously win, but they also cover that
Yeah,
easily.
I agree. I think we do.
I think the problem here is just briefly. I think a lot of the players on the Spartans roster are thinking about transferring.
Yeah,
That's
how
they have
much buy-in do they have for this
yeah
game?
they're looking ahead to their life outside of this school.
Or is it a case of, hey, Coach Ferentz, you wanted me to come play for you? I'll put on a show tonight, and then I'll come play for you next week. That would be wild. Like Iowa, like we beat Penn State beats the shit out of us, then we pick up like 10 dudes from Michigan State, and we just got a whole different team on offense.
There you go.
Come Indy. That would be so wild. Which is why I can't believe they fired him during the season. Because like you're still playing the season. Like the transfer window doesn't wait till the season.
No, they could transfer at any time now. Once
Yeah.
he was terminated today, there is a 30-day window where players can transfer out and be able to suit up elsewhere. That's crazy to me.
Yeah,
I mean,
I can't believe they didn't wait.
well, the other thing is that they played a game last week with this whole thing hovering over them. That was just
the whole handling has just been
yeah,
how much that leak fucked them.
yeah.
In terms of the timing, it was just not great. But our other game, our last game, I think we said we're both picking Iowa.
Iowa, yep.
This game is really interesting on who you pick. We have a 5 p.m. kick. It's another ranked matchup. We have number 13 LSU going to number 20 Ole Miss.
Yep.
What's your take?
I was not impressed by the Rebels last week. I thought they were going to beat Alabama. They disappointed me there. Jackson Dart, I think is his name, the quarterback over at Ole Miss, was not impressed once again. Once again, he's leading the team both in passing and rushing. So I think there's some disjointedness going on with Ole Miss right now.
Yeah, they don't have a great identity.
No, I think Lane Kiffin is not a head coach. I think we keep trying to make him a head coach, and he's not a head coach in football. I picked LSU. I know
they're favored by 3 right now.
3-point
at least on the
favorite
ESPN line.
Yeah, they're 3-point favorite going in on the road. Yeah, they're gonna win. They're gonna. Is it a blowout? I'm gonna say. Well, it depends on what you consider a blowout going on the road. Against a ranked opponent. But I'm gonna say LSU wins by 2 touchdowns. Yeah.
I don't know if I'll go that far, but I am also picking LSU.
Okay. I think this is a good game for LSU to really get back into the graces of the college football playoff. To kind of put they're gonna, because they have Ole Miss, then they have Missouri, who's currently ranked, and then they have a couple of Auburn and Army softies, but then they Alabama, Florida, and then they close out against A&M. So I think LSU is like, hey, don't forget about us guys. Everybody thought we were going to be the surprise team of the SEC, and then we opened up with that loss at Florida State. But I think this is the one where I think they're going to try to really, to run up the score. They're going to try to, but Ole Miss is still a talented team. But yeah, they're going to go on the road and win by a couple scores.
Agreed. Anything else you want to touch on before we wrap up here for week 5?
No, that's really it, man. Like this is one of those weeks where there's some ranked games here, but they don't look like they're oh my god type of games.
Yeah, I wonder if this is
think,
one of those weeks where we look back and go, "Oh, that was where a team was like showed who they were."
Yeah, I think this is. Hopefully, this is the dust is starting to settle a bit week, and then obviously, for Texas we have that rivalry week next week, right? That's a big deal, but there's things to think about. It's Kansas. There's a joke with Texas over the last couple years, both under Strong and Tom Herman, losing games against awful Kansas teams, right? This all sets up. This could be a trap game for a lot of people. Like there's a lot of fear. They're like, hey man, Kansas isn't bad. They have a good quarterback. Texas could be thinking way too far ahead about Oklahoma. I don't think that's the case.
I don't either.
Even if they were, I think Texas is way too talented at this point. And the fact that all the freshmen on both offense now the last couple of weeks, but also on defense since week 1, the freshmen are getting a lot of snaps. Even Anthony Hill, the linebacker, is the starting outside linebacker now for the Horns. I think at this point they have a ton of depth there, not just bodies. They have depth because there's a lot of game time experience with all the freshmen too. So this game is one of those like we keep saying. By halftime, if they're not blowing them away, coming out of the third quarter, Texas is going to score 2 touchdowns, and then that's it. We're off to the races. So yeah, man, I think, but people could be a little nervous to say this is a trap game for Texas, and I don't blame them, but I think Texas is just too damn good at this point, man.
Agreed. Well,
which is funny because 2 weeks ago we were both kind of feeling like, hey, Texas and Iowa could be having like, hey man, this.
I didn't really believe that because I knew our offense was just. It's Brian Ferentz. Like, even when it's like decent, it's still, it's like Twitch plays would call a better game plan than him. You know what I mean? Like, there's no setup, there's no payoff. Nope. He keeps calling fucking tight end middle screens. There's like, no, that's the fucking counter. That's not the setup. That's the counter. What the fuck are you doing? Where's the screen on the edge? That's the setup.
Yeah, where the bubble screens, where the wide receiver slants.
And then you run the bubble screen, and then you fuck him up the ass with the tight end down the middle. That's what the tight end screen is for.
Yep. I think a good example was last week with Texas. You saw that with JT Sanders. That was what they were doing. Like they were short drops, short passes, spreading it out a little bit, and then all of a sudden you found right up the middle, 25, 30 yards, there's your tight end coming across, running across the flat. It's like, boom, there he is, wide open, 60 yards. It's like, I don't understand it either. Does he think he's smarter than everyone else? Or...
I think he does. And he doesn't realize that. So every time, it's like 90%. If we have an incomplete pass on first, he runs on second down. No checks, no audibles, nothing. Run the ball after an incomplete pass every single fucking time.
Yeah.
They know what his plays are. He has no spontaneity, no tendency breakers, none. No setup, nothing. Not even smoke and mirrors, just utter ineptitude. It's disheartening as an Iowa fan.
I'm gonna be positive about this, man. I don't think this will be I think at the end of the year, things are gonna be changes made for you guys.
There better be.
I think so.
Just fucking move somebody around. Like we got plenty of former Kirk players on staff, on offense. Let them call plays. Bring Drew Tate back. Guy played quarterback in Canada for like 10 years. Bring him back.
Honestly, man, you've brought it up a few times on this show and in our casual conversations. The big elephant in the room is LeVar Wood.
Yeah, someone's going to hire that dude.
Someone's like, just in the Big 12 alone, there are going to be some really prime opportunities for him to go jump
either as coordinator or head coach somewhere. Yep, someone's going to hire that dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think maybe you're right. Maybe the AD decides to quietly push the Ferenz family out the door. Like,
yeah, which would suck for that to be the way to go out. But it's definitely one of those. As long as it can end with a bowl win, I think everyone will mostly be okay with it.
Yeah.
Especially if that's like his 10th, 11th win, because that means he gets 60%. He's a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame if that happens. You know.
But it would feel realistic because they run the table, win 9 games, right, to finish the season out. Then they go get
Yeah.
crushed.
If we beat Wisconsin, it's 10.
Oh, I'm sorry, they beat Wisconsin State. But what I mean is, like, you go to the Big Ten title game and you get crushed, but then you win the bowl game and you win 10 games. Like, it's like
Yeah.
when you think of it, like if all that happens, like, I think
So
getting
basically,
crushed
basically 2 years ago.
2 years ago, getting crushed in the Big Ten game would be the perfect opportunity for the AD to be like, look, we're not disparaging your legacy, but we
got to compete with these teams.
we've got to compete with these teams. We have money programs coming in next year in UCLA and USC. Like we have to compete. This has to change, So
Yeah.
I mean, the college football landscape changed with the NIL, but I think it's going to change even further now because it's the next step of that evolution with NIL combined with these new bigger conferences. Like for recruiting, like the dogfight is going to get even more intense this winter, So man, yeah, trying to be positive. I know Ferenz has a legacy over there. He's going to have a statue, but like I think at this point, like if you want to be able to have a future in college football and in the Big Ten, you guys have to make a change. So I think that's going to happen. Honestly, I think so.
Yep, fingers crossed that it does.
All right.
Knock on all the wood. All right, we're gonna get out of here.
Yes.
Week 5 preview is in the books. We'll be back for some Week 5 recap and Week 6 talk next week. So stay tuned. We'll break down our pick'em games, some big games. If any new, like crazy news, like Ryan Day going off on 90-year-old Lou Holtz or something happens again, we'll have some conversations about that next week as well. If we don't see you, well, I guess we won't see you, but we'll see you around. Bye. Terrible outro.